The alarm screamed through every corridor of the colony ship. Red emergency lights painted the walls in blood-colored shadows. Captain Dohan Park gripped the command chair as another explosion rocked the vessel. Sparks flew from a console to his left. The smell of burning metal filled the air. Life support at 30%. Engineer MJI Kang called out from her station. Her voice stayed steady, but her hands shook as they moved across the controls. We're losing it faster now. Maybe 6 hours left, maybe less. Duyan closed his eyes for a moment. Behind his eyelids he saw the faces of everyone aboard. 4,127 people, men, women, children, all counting on him, all dying slowly in the cold darkness of space. The ship shuddered again. More alarms joined the chorus. Engine core is completely dead, MJI said. Her voice cracked this time. I can't fix it. We don't have the parts. We don't have anything. Young Jun Holy sat at the communication station. He was barely 23 years old. This was his first deep space mission. He stared at his screen with wide eyes. Still no response to our distress signals. We're too far from any mapped routes. Nobody's coming. Ambassador Tahan Choi stood near the back of the bridge. He was supposed to represent humanity at their new colony world. Now he would die before ever seeing it. He looked at the captain and said nothing. There was nothing to say. Doyen pulled up the star map. Empty space in every direction. They had taken a shortcut through an uncharted region. It was supposed to save them 3 months of travel time. Instead it had killed them. Some kind of spatial anomaly had torn through their engines. Now they drifted, powerless and invisible to the rest of the galaxy. Captain Junho said suddenly. His voice rose with something that might have been hope. I'm picking up something. Ships. Multiple ships. They're not human. Everyone on the bridge went still. Are they responding to our distress call? Doi asked. Junho shook his head. I don't think they even heard it. They're passing through the area. Pure chance. D-Hound felt his heart pound. This could be salvation, or it could be something worse than slow death. Humanity was still new to the galaxy. They had met a few alien species. Some were friendly, some were not. Some saw humans as little more than animals. Hail them, Diane ordered. All frequencies. Tell them we're dying. Tell them we need help. Junho's fingers flew across his controls, sending now. Minutes crawled by. Each second felt like an hour. The life support systems groaned. The temperature on the ship dropped another degree. People were gathering in the central areas now, trying to stay warm, trying to stay together. If these were their last hours, at least they would not die alone. Captain Junho's voice broke the silence. They're responding, translating. Now, a voice came through the speakers. It sounded like clicking and humming, but the computer turned it into words they could understand. Human vessel, this is Hive Leader Tixvara of the Velray Patrol Fleet. We have received your distress call. What is your situation? Doi leaned forward. This is Captain Doi Park. Our engines are destroyed. Life support is failing. We have over 4,000 people aboard, including 800 children. We're dead. Space. A long pause, then another voice joined the conversation. This one sounded different, colder. Hive Leader, our supplies are limited. We are already running behind schedule. The Council will not approve this delay. Tixar's voice replied, firm and clear. I am aware of our limitations, but these are Thinking beings, they have young. We cannot leave them to die. The council. The other voice began. The council is not here, Tixvara said. I am, and I say. We help them. Doi felt something tight. In his chest loosened just a little, just enough to breathe. Human vessel, Tixvara said. We are sending repair drones and emergency supplies. Our engineers will assess your damage. Hold on a little longer. The next 3 hours blurred together. Doi watched through the viewports as strange ships approached. They looked like massive insects, all angles and segments covered in a dark green shell. Smaller craft detached from them carrying cargo and equipment. Me worked with the Velray engineers through translated communications. They sent over repair nanites, tiny machines that could rebuild damaged system. They sent atmosphere processors to restore the life support. They sent power cells to restart the main computers. Slowly and possibly the ship came back to life. The alarm stopped. The lights turned from red to white. Warm air began to flow through the vents. Children stopped crying. People stopped preparing to die. Dohyun stood in the cargo bay as Velray workers loaded supplies onto his ship. He had never seen their species before. They stood on 6 legs with forearms that moved independently. Their eyes were compound, reflecting light in rainbow patterns. They looked frightening, but they moved with gentleness as they stacked crates of food and medicine. Ambassador Tahan approached Tixvara, who had come aboard to oversee the operation. We must repay you, Tahan said. We have trade goods, technology, anything you need. Name your price. Tixar's translator rendered their response. You have nothing we need. Your species is young, still growing. You have no resources to spare. Then let us offer an alliance to High Unpressed, a treaty, future cooperation. We ask for nothing. Tixvara said simply. You were dying. We could help. That is enough reason. Dunnan stepped forward. At least let us record this debt. Let us remember what you've done. Tixvara's head tilted in a way that might have been curiosity. If it pleases you to remember, then remember. But we expect nothing in return. The Velray fleet prepared to depart. Me confirmed that the engines would hold long enough to reach the nearest human outpost. They would survive, all of them. Doi went to the ship's main computer and opened the permanent log. This was the record that could never be erased, never edited. It would survive as long as humanity survived. He typed carefully. Star date 2,847,317. The Velray saved us. Hive leader Tixvara and their fleet rescued 4,127 human lives when they had no reason to do so. They asked for nothing. They expected nothing. We will never forget this debt. We will never forget their kindness. This is recorded forever. He marked the entry with the highest priority level. Then he sent copies to every major human colony to Earth, to the military command. This was not just his memory anymore. It was humanity's memory. On the bridge, Junho watched the Velray ships disappear into faster than light travel. Do you think they know? He asked quietly. Do they know how much this meant to us? Down put a hand on the young man's shoulder. Probably not. They seemed to think it was just another day's work, but it wasn't. Junho said. They saved us. They saved everyone. I know, Diane said, and one day we'll find a way to thank them properly. Maybe not today. Maybe not for a long time. But humans, don't forget, We remember who helped us. We always remember. The ship limped toward safety, carrying its precious cargo of lives in the computer's core. The record burned bright, a debt recorded, a favor marked, a promise made. Without words, humanity remembered. Admiral Heejin's song walked through the memorial hall on Earth. Her boots clicked against the polished floor. Above her, the ceiling stretched up into darkness, but the walls glowed with names, thousands upon thousands of names. This was the ledger. Every species that had ever helped humanity was written here in gold. Every species that had harmed humanity was written in red. The rules were simple and absolute. Help humanity, and you would never be forgot. Hurt humanity, and you would never be forgiven. She stopped in front of the largest golden inscription, the Velrathi. The entry took up an entire wall. It listed every person aboard the Namson's Hope, all 4,127 names. At the top, in letters that seemed to glow brighter than the rest, was one line: they saved us when we had nothing to give them. Heejin's grandmother had been on that ship. Small child, only 5 years old, crying her mother's arms as the air grew cold and thin. Her grandmother told the story. Every year on the anniversary, she was 63 now, and still her voice shook when she spoke of the moment they arrived. Admiral's song, a voice interrupted her thoughts. She turned to see Dr. Sun Lim, one of the best xenohistorians in human space. He carried a data pad and looked worried. Doctor, she acknowledged, you said you had urgent information. Zhongjai gestured to a private room off the main hall. They entered, and he locked the door behind them. His hand shook slightly as he activated his data pad. I've been tracking the for years, he said. Cultural research, historical patterns, that sort of thing, but recently I've noticed something alarming. He pulled up a star map. The territory was marked in green. It had shrunk considerably from its size in the old records. 20 years ago they controlled 14 star systems, Sunung explained. Now they control only 8. They're being pushed back by the Krothian Empire. Heejin studied the map. She knew about the Krothians, a brutal species that believed in conquest and domination. They were strong, organized, and cruel. How bad is it? Bad, Sun said quietly. I've been analyzing refugee movements. Rothe civilians are fleeing their outer colonies. The Krothians aren't just taking territory, they're enslaving populations, destroying anything they can't use. He pulled up another screen. Intelligence reports gathered from various sources: merchant ships, spy satellites, intercepted communications. The Krothians are planning something big. I think they're going to attack the home world. Heejin felt her blood run cold. When 6 months, maybe less. She looked back at the data pad, then at Sunung. Have they asked for help? No. He said they're too proud, or maybe they don't think anyone would come. They've been isolated for decades. They have no major allies. Yijin stood silent for a long moment. In her mind, she saw her grandmother's face. She heard the story again, the moment when hope arrived in the form of insect-like aliens who asked for nothing in return. Gather everything you have, she said, every piece of intelligence. I need to take this to General Dayan. 2 days later, Heejin stood in the military command center. General Dihun Ryu sat behind his desk, reviewing the same information. Around the room, other high-ranking officers watched the presentation: maps, charts, projections. The Crothian fleet is massive, one admiral said. If we intervene, we're talking about a major war. The Velry aren't our allies. Another added, we have no treaty with them, no formal relationship at all. They saved us, Higgin said, her voice cut through the discussion like a blade. 120 years ago, they saved 4,000 of our people. They asked for nothing, they expected nothing, and now they're dying. General Dehan looked up at her. He was old, his hair completely white. But his eyes were sharp. You're suggesting we mobilize our fleet to repay a debt from over a century ago? Yes, sir, a debt they probably don't even remember. Yes, sir. The general leaned back in his chair. What does the ledger say? Everyone in the room knew what that meant. The ledger was more than just a memorial. It was policy. It was law. It was the foundation of human foreign relations. The Rothai are written in gold, Hedgen said at the very top. They were the first species to show us mercy when we needed it most. Dehan nodded slowly. He stood up and walked to the window. Outside, Earth glowed blue and white, home to 15 billion people. The heart of human civilization. They had come so far in just over a century. How many ships do we have available? He asked. 400 warships, an officer replied. If we pull from every fleet. Pull them, Dehan said. All of them. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Sir, one admiral protested, that will leave our own borders vulnerable. Then we'll be vulnerable, Dehan said. He turned to face them all. Humanity pays its debts. That's not just words on a wall. That's who we are. The Velry saved us and now we saved them. That's the deal. He looked at Hedon. You'll command the fleet, Admiral. Get them ready. We leave in 1 month. The next 30 days were chaos. Ships from across human space converged on the staging point. Carriers, battleships, destroyers, support vessels, 400 ships crewed by 60,000 people. It was the largest military deployment in human history. Merchant Captain Juan Nam arrived at the command ship to brief Hyjin on the territory they would be crossing. She had traded with both the Rotha and species near their space. They're not going to understand why you're coming, Juan warned. The Velry keep to themselves. They don't ask for help. They don't expect it. Then we'll surprise them, Higgin said. She studied the routes, the jump points, the timing. Everything had to be perfect. If they arrive too early, they might start a diplomatic incident. Too late and the Velry would be gone. On the day of departure, Higgin addressed the entire fleet over the communication network. 60,000 faces watched her from screens across 400 ships. Some of you are too young to remember the story of Namson's hope, she began, but all of you know it. You learned it in school. You heard it from your parents and grandparents. The day the Velry saved us. She paused, letting the words sink in. They didn't know us. They had no reason to help, but they did it anyway because it was right. Now they're in danger and they're too proud to ask for help, so we're not going to wait for them to ask. We're going to show them what humanity does for its friends. She looked directly into the camera. We remember every favor. We remember every kindness. And we pay our debts, all of them, no matter how long it takes. The fleet jumped into faster than light travel. 400 ships, moving as one, carrying the weight of a century-old promise. Back on Earth, people gathered at the ledger. They stood in front of the golden inscription, reading the names of those who had been saved, Some cried. Some prayed. All of them hoped. In the government chambers, the vote had been unanimous, not a single voice of opposition. The treasury was opened wide. Every resource humanity could spare was allocated to the mission. Because that was the rule, the unbreakable law that had guided humanity for over a century. Help us and we will move planets to help you in return. The message spread across the galaxy. Through merchant ships and diplomatic channels, humanity was mobilizing. Humanity was going to war, not for territory, not for resources, for a debt. Other species watched with confusion, some with fear. The humans were proving themselves to be strange creatures, creatures who remembered, creatures who kept their promises. The Crothian Empire heard the news and laughed. What did they care if humans wanted to die alongside the Velra? It would make the conquest even easier. But deep in human space, in the halls of military command, General Dayan looked at the strategic maps and smiled. The Crothians thought they knew humanity. They were about to learn that they knew nothing at all. The human fleet dropped out of faster than light travel at the edge of space. 400 warships materialized. In the darkness, their running lights blazing like a constellation of new stars. Admiral Higgins' Song stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the sensor displays. Somewhere ahead was the Velray Border Patrol. They would arrive soon and they would not be happy. All ships report ready, Admiral. Her tactical officer said. Weapons are powered down as ordered, shields at minimum. Good, Yajin said. We're not here to fight them, we're here to save them, Captain Young Minhan commanded. The dreadnought Indomitable, the largest warship in the fleet, he stood at his command station, reviewing the battle plans. They had practiced this 100 times, but practice and reality were very different things. Captain, his sensor officer called out. Multiple contacts, 20th warships approaching fast. They're charging weapons. Young men felt his pulse quicken. Hold position. Don't make any aggressive moves. Across the fleet, the same scene played out. Human ships waited, passive but ready. If this went wrong, if the Velray saw them as invaders, everything would fall apart before it even began. On the flagship, Ambassador Minyu Quan stepped onto the bridge. He was the voice of diplomacy, chosen specifically because his grandfather had been on Namzen's Hope. He understood the debt personally. They're hailing us, the communications officer reported. Audio and video, put it through, Hijin ordered. The main screen lit up with the image of a Velray commander, their compound eyes reflected the light in multiple colors. Their mandibles clicked together as they spoke. The translator rendered it into human language. Human fleet, you have violated Velray territory. This is an act of war. Power down your weapons and explain your presence immediately. Minyu stepped forward. I am Ambassador Minyu Quan, representing the United Human Government. We come not as enemies but as friends. We know about the Crothian threat to your home world, the Ratha commander's head tilted. That is not your concern. Leave our space immediately or we will open fire. We cannot do that, Minyu said calmly. 120 years ago your people saved us. A ship called Naman's Hope was dying in deep space. Hive leader Tix Vera found them and gave aid, asking nothing in return. We have come to return that favor. There was a long pause. The Velrathi commander looked confused. I know Nothing of this event, the commander said. It was over a century ago. It has no relevance now. It has every relevance, Hagen spoke up, her voice firm. We are humanity. We remember every kindness shown to us. Your people saved 4,000 of ours, and now we will save you from the Crothians. More Velroy ships were arriving. The human fleet was now surrounded by 50 enemy vessels. The tension was thick enough to cut. We do not need your help, the Velroy commander said, but there was something in their voice, uncertainty, maybe even fear. With respect, Commander Minu said, you do. The Crothians are coming with 800 warships. You have less than 200. You cannot win this fight alone, but together we have a chance. The screen went dark as the Velroy cut the communication. The human fleet waited in tense silence. Minutes passed, then an hour. Admiral, the sensor officer said suddenly, we're receiving a new transmission. It's coming from the Rathe home world. Priority 1, put it through, Hagen ordered. An elderly appeared on screen. Their exoskeleton was faded with age. Their movement slow, but their eyes were bright and alert. I am Tixvara the Old. One said, I led the fleet that found your ship so long ago. I never thought I would hear that name again. Hagen felt her breath catch. This was the one, the Velroy, who had made the choice to save them. Hive leader Tixva, Hagen said, bowing her head with respect. Your kindness changed the course of human history. We would not be here today without you. Tixer's mandibles moved in a way that might have been sadness. I did what any decent being would do. You were dying. We had the ability to help. It was simple. It was everything, Hagen said, and now we do the same for you. You're in danger. We have the ability to help. It is simple. The old Velroy made a sound like wind through leaves, a sigh. Perhaps you bring 400 warships across the galaxy for a debt we do not even remember. Your species is strange, Admiral. We prefer to think of it as loyal, Hagen replied. Tixvara looked at something off-screen, then back at the camera. My people's military commanders say you should leave. They say we can handle this ourselves, but I am old and I remember what it was like to make hard choices. I remember your ancestors' faces when we pulled them from death. If you truly mean to help us, then I welcome you. The screen changed to show the commander from before. They looked frustrated but resigned. The council has overruled me. You may enter our space. But know this, humans, if you betray us, we will make sure your entire species remembers the cost. We would expect nothing less. Yedin said. The Velroy ships powered down their weapons. Human fleet moved forward. Two species separated by a century and a half. The galaxy now united against a common enemy. Over the next 2 months, the combined fleets prepared for war. Colonel Sayang Bei led her special forces units to the Rathe home world to train with their ground troops. The differences between the species were vast, but both sides adapted quickly. Tactical Officer Yoonji Park, granddaughter of the original captain Dohan Park, worked with strategists to plan the defense. She spread out star maps on a holographic table, pointing out positions and weak points. Crothians will expect you to defend your home world directly, she explained. They'll come in force, trying to overwhelm you with numbers. A Velroy general nodded. That is their way. They believe overwhelming force wins all battles. Then we don't fight the battle they expect, Yoonji said. She highlighted the asteroid belt surrounding the Velry. Home world, we turn this into a trap, we make them think they're winning, and then we close the jaws. Captain Youngman worked with engineers on weapon integration. The two species had different technologies, different strengths. The key was finding ways to complement each other. Your ships are faster, he observed, more maneuverable, but our weapons hit harder at long range, and your shields are stronger, a Velrothi engineer added. But our hulls regenerate slowly over time, so we fight in mixed groups. Young suggested, your speed, our firepower, together we're better than either of us alone. Intelligence reports came in daily. The Crothian fleet was gathering 800 warships just as predicted. They were supremely confident. They had never lost a major battle. Ambassador Minu sent messages to other species in the region. The Crothians were a threat to everyone. Perhaps others would join the fight, but the responses were all the same: too dangerous, too risky, better to stay neutral and hope. The Crothians were satisfied with territory. We're alone, Minu reported to Hijan. Just us and the Ratha. We've faced worse odds, Hijan said, though privately she wasn't sure that was true. Tixvara visited the human flagship one final time before the battle. The old Velry walked slowly through the corridors, looking at everything with curious eyes. Your ship smelled different than ours, Tixvara observed. Metal and something else. Life. We bring a bit of home with us wherever we go, Hijan said. She led Tixvara to the observation deck. Outside, both fleets were visible, human ships in tight formations, Velry vessels dancing between them like schools of fish. Tell me truly, Admiral Tixvara said, why do you do this? You could have sent a small force, a token gesture. Instead, you bring everything. You risk your entire military for us. Hijan looked out at the fleet. So many ships, so many lives. All here because of a promise made before most of them were born. We're not doing this just for you, she said quietly. We're doing it for ourselves too. We're proving something to the galaxy, yes, but also to ourselves. We're proving that gratitude matters, that loyalty matters, that memory matters. She turned to face the old Velry. You saved us once. You taught us that mercy has value. Now we teach the galaxy that humanity keeps its word. We remember our friends and we protect them. Tixvara was silent for a long moment, then their mandibles moved. What Hijan had learned was their version of a smile. I am glad we found your ship that day, Tixvara said. Even if it leads to this battle, the galaxy needs species like yours. The alert sounded sharp and urgent. The sensor officer's voice came through the comm system. Admiral, we have multiple contacts at the system's edge. It's them. The Crothians are here. Hijan looked out at the stars one last time, then she turned and walked toward the bridge. All ships to battle stations, she ordered. It's time to pay our debt, Warm Master. Drath stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the Velry home world grow larger on the view screen. Behind him, 800 Crothian warships moved. Perfect formation, the largest war fleet the Crothian Empire had ever assembled. The prey planet looks beautiful, Drathos said, his translator turning his guttural speech into something other species could understand. Soon it will be ours. His second officer approached. War Master, we detected the Velry fleet earlier, but they have withdrawn. They appear to have fled behind the planet's moon. Drathos laughed a harsh Barking sound, of course they fled. They know they cannot win, this will be easier than we thought, the Crothian. Ships pushed deeper into the system. Past the outer planets, past the gas giants toward the inner system where the home world waited. The asteroid belt lay ahead, a ring of rocks orbiting the sun. Sensors detect minimal activity in the belt, the officer reported. Some automated mining stations, nothing military. Maintain course, Drathos ordered. Will crush anything in our path. The fleet entered the asteroid belt. Rock fragments drifted past the ships, some as small as pebbles, others as large as buildings. The Crothians had passed through dozens of such belts before. They were no obstacle. Aboard the human flagship, Admiral Hyogen watched the Crothian fleet advance. They were coming exactly as predicted, overconfident, focused only on the planet ahead. They saw the belt as empty space. They didn't see the hidden human ships powered down to minimal levels, hiding among the asteroids. They didn't see the vessels tucked into the shadows behind the moon. They didn't see the weapons that had been placed on carefully selected rocks. There in the kill zone, Tactical Officer Yunji reported. Her voice was steady, but her hands gripped her console tightly. 800 ships all within the belt. Ijin took a slow breath. This was the moment. Everything depended on the next few minutes. All ships, she said clearly, execute protocol. Retribution, across the asteroid belt. 400 human warships powered up. Simultaneously, their running lights blazed to life, their weapons charged. Their shields snapped into place. Crothian fleet suddenly found themselves surrounded. Drathos stared at his sensor display in shock. Where had they come from? How had they hidden so many ships? War Master, his officer shouted. There. Humans, 400 human warships. Impossible. Drath snarled. Humanity has no interest in this sector. What are they doing here? His communication system crackled to life. Admiral Hyogen's face appeared on his screen. War Master Drathos, she said calmly. You are about to learn an important lesson about humanity. We remember our debts, all of them, Drathos sneered. You are outnumbered 2-1 human. You cannot win this fight. Surrender now, and we will let your fleet leave. I wasn't asking for terms, Hyogen said. I was giving you a chance to surrender. You won't take it. I know your species doesn't believe in retreat, so let me show you what happens when you threaten humanity's friends. She cut the transmission and turned to Colonel Su Yangbei, who waited at the tactical station. Colonel Yajin said, show them. Su Yang smiled coldly and pressed a series of commands. Throughout the asteroid belt, the rocks themselves came alive. Humanity had spent 2 months preparing. They had placed engines on selected asteroids, guidance systems, targeting computers. They had turned hundreds of massive rocks into weapons, each one loaded with kinetic energy from years of orbiting the sun. Now those asteroids began to move. The Crothian fleet watched in growing horror as rocks the size of city blocks accelerated toward them. No explosives, no fancy weapons, just mass and velocity, physics at its most brutal, evasive action. Drow screamed, but there was nowhere to go. The human fleet blocked one side. The asteroids came from all directions. The Crothians were trapped in a sphere of death. The first impacts were catastrophic. Asteroids moving at impossible speed slammed into Crothian ships. Shields meant to stop energy Weapons were useless against solid matter traveling at orbital velocity. Hulls crumpled like paper, ships broke apart, spilling atmosphere and crew into the void. Return fire, Drathos ordered. Destroy those humans. The Crothian fleet began shooting. Energy beams lanced out toward the human ships. Some found their targets. Human shields flared and failed. 2 ships took critical damage and began to drift, but the humans didn't fight alone. From behind the moon, the Velray fleet emerged, 200 ships moving with incredible speed and agility. They dove into the chaos, their weapons focusing on damaged Crothian vessels, finishing what the asteroids had started. Pilot Sun Wu-Anan led a squadron of human bombers into the maelstrom. His fighter was tiny compared to the massive capital ships, but it was fast and armed with precision weapons. Gold Squadron. He called over the comm, target their command ships, take out their ability to coordinate. The fighters wove through the battle, dodging debris and weapons fire. Sun wheeled onto a Crothian command carrier. It was trying to organize a defensive formation, bringing ships together to concentrate their firepower. Fox 3, Sun Wu called, launching his missile. They streaked across space and slammed into the carrier's bridge section. The ship began to list its commands, becoming confused and contradictory. All across the battlefield, the same scene repeated. Human and Velray forces worked together with practiced precision. They had trained for this, planned for it, sacrificed for it. The Crothians were brave and fierce, but they were fighting a battle designed specifically to counter their strengths. Their numbers meant nothing in the confined space of the belt. Their heavy weapons couldn't track the fast-moving ships. Their shields couldn't stop the asteroids. Captain Youngman commanded the Indomitable from the heart of the fleet. His dreadnought absorbed hits that would have destroyed smaller ships. Its massive cannons fired methodically, each shot destroying or crippling a Crothian vessel. Captain, his weapons officer, called out, "We're running low on ammunition. Main guns at 40% capacity. Switch to secondary weapons," young men ordered, "and keep those shields strong. We need to hold the line." Drathos watched his fleet die. Half his ships were gone or disabled. The humans in Velray pressed the attack from all sides. His mighty war fleet was being torn apart. "Retreat," he finally screamed. "All ships withdraw." But the human fleet had positioned themselves to block the escape routes. Ships that tried to flee ran into walls of weapons fire. Velray harried their flanks, preventing them from organizing. In desperation, Drathos made a final decision. If he could not conquer the Velray home world, he would destroy it. He turned his damaged flagship toward the planet and engaged maximum thrust. "All power to engines," he ordered. "We will ram their world. We will make them pay for this humiliation." His massive ship accelerated, pushing past the human vessels, ignoring the weapons fire that tore at its hull. The planet grew larger. If he could just reach it, his ship's reactor would explode on impact with enough force to devastate the surface. Admiral Higgin saw what was happening. "Young men," she shouted over the command channel, "stop him. Don't let that ship reach the planet." Captain Youngman didn't hesitate. He turned the Indomitable directly into the path of the Crothian flagship. His crew scrambled to reinforce the forward shield. The ship's frame groaned under the acceleration. The two Massive vessels collided in a shower of sparks and torn metal. The indomitable shields held for a moment, then began to fail. Hull plates buckled. Internal compartments vented to space, but Youngman's ship held firm. It caught the Crothian flagship and began pushing it off course, away from the planet, away from the millions of Roth civilians. Below, all weapons fire, young men ordered at point-blank range. The Indomitable unleashed everything it had. Missiles, cannons, lasers. The Crothian flagship's hull couldn't withstand the assault. It began to break apart piece by piece. The Velray fleet converged on the dying ship. Every vessel added its weapons to the barrage. The combined firepower was overwhelming. Drath saw his ship dying around him. His bridge was on fire. His crew was dead or dying. He had lost completely. The Crothian flagship exploded in a brilliant flash of light. The shock wave rocked nearby ships, but the planet below remained safe. The remaining Crothian vessels, seeing their leader dead and their fleet destroyed, finally broke and ran. Of 800 ships, only 23 managed to escape the system. The rest were debris floating among the asteroids they had foolishly entered. The battle was over. The Indomitable drifted, its engines offline, its hull torn open dozens of places, but its crew was alive. Captain Youngman sat in his command chair, breathing hard, watching the rescue ships approach. On the surface of the Rothai home world, millions of civilians felt the tremors from the orbital impacts. Debris rained down, burning up in the atmosphere. The ground shook as pieces of destroyed ships fell into the oceans. When planets shake, people remember why. The hospital ship moved slowly through the debris field, collecting survivors and bringing medical aid to damaged vessels. Admiral Higginsong sat in a recovery bed, her left arm in a cast, bandages wrapped around her ribs. Final moments of the battle had been violent. A piece of shrapnel had torn through her flagship's bridge. She had been lucky. Captain Youngman M. Manhan sat 2 beds away. His injuries were more severe. Burns covered his hands and face from the fire that had swept through the Indomitable's bridge, but he was alive. His ship had held together long enough to save the planet below. "They're calling you a hero," Yejin said, her voice rough with pain. "Medication." Youngman shook his head carefully. "I was just doing my job, protecting those who can't protect themselves. That's what heroes do," she replied. Outside the medical bay, the cleanup continued. Human and Velroy ships worked together to clear the dangerous debris. Bodies were recovered and prepared for burial. Ships were salvaged where possible. The asteroid belt would never look the same again. The news of the battle spread across the galaxy at the speed of light. Humanity had defeated the Crothian Empire's largest fleet, not for conquest, not for resources, for a debt that was over a century old. In the Galactic Council chambers, representatives from dozens of species watched the recordings in stunned silence. The tactical display showed how the humans had turned simple rocks into devastating weapons, how they had fought with precision and coordination, how they had sacrificed their own ships to protect the home world. They mobilized 400 warships. One council member whispered, their entire fleet. For what? For a favor from over 100 years ago. They remember, another said quietly. That's what the humans do. They remember everything. Within days, 16 Species sent diplomatic delegations to Earth. Ships arrived carrying gifts, trade agreements, and requests for audiences. Each one carried the same underlying message: we want to be your friends, we want to be written in gold. In the ledger, 3 species sent quieter messages, private communications, directly to the human government. We helped your colony ships in the early days. Do you remember? The human response was immediate and warm. Yes, we remember. How can we help you? 1 species, the Helax, had provided fuel and navigation data to a lost human exploration ship 30 years ago. They were now facing a famine due to crop failures. Within a week, human cargo ships arrived with food supplies, enough to feed their population for a year. Free of charge. This is far more than we gave you, the Helax ambassador said. Overwhelmed, you helped us when we needed it, the human representative replied. Now we help you. That's how this works. The second species, the Tivol, had rescued human miners from a collapsing asteroid facility 40 years ago. They were now struggling with a disease outbreak. Human medical ships arrived with doctors, equipment, and experimental treatments. They worked around the clock until the outbreak was contained. The third species, the UN, had shared defensive technology with humanity during a pirate crisis 50 years ago. They now face territorial disputes with an aggressive neighbor. Human diplomats arrived to mediate. When diplomacy failed, human ships arrived to patrol the borders. The aggressor quickly backed down. The message was clear: help humanity, and humanity would move mountains to help you in return. But there was another side to the ledger, the part written in red. The Crothian Empire received a formal message from humanity. It was simple and direct: you threatened our friends, you killed our soldiers, you have been marked in red. We do not forget. Crothians tried to send ambassadors to negotiate. Humanity refused to see them. They tried to offer trade agreements. Humanity rejected them all. For the next decade, no human would do business with the Crothians. No human ship would enter their space. They were isolated, marked as enemies. Other species watched and learned the humans were not just loyal to their friends, they were relentless toward their enemies. On the Rothai home world, massive reconstruction efforts began. Human engineers worked alongside builders to repair the damage from falling debris. The craters from the impacts were slowly filled. The burned forests were replanted. Ambassador Minyu Quan met with the Roth High Council to discuss the future. The Velray wanted to offer humanity anything: territory, resources, technology. They felt the weight of the debt they now owed. We cannot accept payment, Minyu said firmly. That's not why we came. Then what do you want? Council member asked, frustrated. You saved our entire species. There must be something. Minyu thought for a moment. Treaty, a mutual defense pact, an agreement that if either of us is threatened, the other will respond. That's all we ask. That is not equal. The council member protested. You gave us everything. We give you only promises. Promises are what matter most, Minyu said. Your promises led Hive leader Tixvara to save our ancestors. Our promises brought us here to save you. Promises between species, kept across generations. That's what builds a better galaxy. The treaty was signed within a week. The first formal alliance between humanity and another species. It would not be the last Tikvara, now incredibly old and frail, asked to meet with Admiral Hijin one final time. The meeting took place in a garden on the Rathai home world. Trees swayed in the gentle breeze, water fountains played peaceful music. Tikvara moved slowly, supported by younger. They settled onto a resting platform, their compound eyes reflecting the sunlight. I am dying, Tikvara said. Simply, old age finally catching up with me, but I wanted to see you before I go. Hijin sat across from them, her arm still in its cast. It's an honor, Hive leader, tell me truly, Tikvara said. Why did you risk so much? Why bring your entire fleet? You could have sent a token force, a small gesture instead. You risked everything. Hein looked out at the garden. It was beautiful, peaceful, worth saving, because you gave us a gift you didn't understand. She said, when you saved those people on Namsen's hope, you weren't just saving lives, you were teaching us something. You showed us that kindness matters, that helping others has value beyond profit or politics. She turned back to Tikvara. Everything we became as a species started with that moment. You showed us mercy when we were weak, and we built our entire civilization on that foundation. We became the kind of species that remembers favors, that keeps promises, that helps others the way you helped us. Tikvara was quiet. For a long time, I did not know, they finally said. I thought we were just helping some strangers. I did not know it would lead to all of this. Small acts of kindness often do, Hijin said. They ripple outward in ways we can never predict. Tikvara's mandibles moved in their version of a smile. Then I am glad we found your ship that day. I am glad I made the choice to help, and I am glad to see what your species has become. 3 days later, Tikvara passed away peacefully. The entire Velra home world mourned, and so did humanity on Earth. A special ceremony was held at the ledger. Millions gathered to watch as a new inscription was added, not in gold or red but in platinum, a color that had never been used before. Hive leader Tikvara, the one who started it all, the one who showed us that mercy matters, the one who saved us, and in doing so shaped who we would become. Gone but never forgotten, the Velrathi erected their own monument on their home world, a massive statue showing humans and standing together. The inscription read, Humanity, the species that remembers. Back on Earth, old Jan Holy watched the ceremonies from his home. He was 98 now, one of the last survivors from Naman's hope. He had been the young communications officer who first detected the Velro ships. He sat in his chair, tears running down his weathered face, and whispered, we kept our promise. We remembered the galaxy had changed. Species that had once ignored humanity now sought their friendship. Those who had considered humans weak prey now gave them a wide berth. The ledger became famous across civilized space. Every species knew the rules. Help humanity, and they would never let you fall. They would cross the galaxy, mobilize their fleets, sacrifice their own people to save yours. They would remember your kindness forever, harm humanity, and they would never forgive. They would mark you in red, isolate you, and if necessary, shake planets to ensure justice. 3 more names were added to the ledger in gold that year. The Helex, the Tyon, and the Yuan, species that had helped humanity in small ways decades ago, species that humanity now helped in return, and at the very top, in the largest Inscription, the Velry name remained. The first, the most important, the ones who had shown humanity what it meant to be good. Admiral Higgins stood in front of the ledger one last time before she retired. Her arm had healed. The scars remained, but they didn't hurt anymore. She traced her fingers over her grandmother's name, listed among the survivors of Namson's hope. Then she looked up at Tixvara's name in platinum. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Behind her, the hall filled with visitors, children on school trips, diplomats from other species, citizens coming to remember. They all stopped and stared at the golden names, at the red ones, at the platinum inscription at the top. The ledger stood as a promise, warning, a testament to what humanity valued above all else: memory, loyalty, justice. Humanity remembered every favor, and their retribution could shake planets,